In the previous video, we arrived at Isla Mujeres after our trip going up north to Progreso to get some work done on some masts. When our friends up north sail down towards Mexico, the first island that they will usually come into contact with is Isla Mujeres. It's located just after crossing the Gulf Stream for many. It's a comfortable and safe arrival point for many cruisers in the region after having some slishy, splashy times crossing the Gulf Stream when there's an opposing wind with the current. It's a good respite. People are thankful to arrive at the quiet and comfort of the protected Anchorage of Isla Mujeres. But apparently, the authorities there are trying to make it no more. So after some months being away from Isla Mujeres, we were hearing some rumors online that the Anchorage was closing down. Of course, our first question when we heard this was how and why. So I hope to kind of go through some of the whys of how this is happening at Isla Mujeres. We arrived in the Anchorage and we were expecting the authorities to come out and meet us right away. In reality, we didn't talk to the authorities while we were anchored there for a short period of time. We were expecting them to come out to the boat, as others had described, and then maybe then we could get more information, but they didn't end up coming out to our boat. The information that we read online was that a couple of weeks before, while we weren't at the island, the authorities came out with their army vessel and told everybody that was anchored to go to a dock. So it is now required, apparently, when you arrive at Isla Mujeres, to go to a designated marina. They're also saying that people can only check in to the country with an agent. There are two specific marinas that we've been told are allowed to check people in that apparently are the proper ones for checking in. This is all very different from information that I've given in previous videos about checking in and out of Isla Mujeres, so that's why I felt the need to make this video. We didn't have the experience of how the Anchorage got cleared out. We weren't there when it happened, and we just have from word of mouth from other cruisers. The authorities came around with their boat, specifically the army boat, and told all the cruisers to clear out of the Anchorage and that they must go to any sort of dock. Of course, that means that when you're not anchored, you have to be then paying dock fees, paying marina fees. So this, of course, is a big change and a big problem for low-budget cruisers such as Robbie and I. We don't have it in our budget to pay several $100s a month for dock. It's a big change. We really want to know why this change has been happening. We're not lawyers or anything of the sort. I can only make interpretation of law that I found online. So, for example, I went looking up Mexican maritime law to maybe try to find some answers as to how or what this is based on. And this is what I found. In Mexican maritime law, it talks about how the harbor master is in charge of enforcing law in harbors in Mexico. What I found is some information about stopping vessels from becoming abandoned and wrecked, which is one of the first visual concerns that a lot of cruisers have talked about at Isla Mujeres. There are wrecks in the bay that are visible. There are some abandoned boats that have been there for some time. And the law seems to talk about how the authorities may declare those boats to be abandoned or wrecks, hazards to navigation, and how they should be towed away if they are a danger and if they are a problem before they become a wreck or before they become inoperable. There's specifics about the authorities giving a temporary amount of time that boats can be moored in a port. Boats should not cause problems for navigation of other vessels or difficulties for commercial operations in the harbors. But other than that, it doesn't really give any more specifications. And this is where I think our confusion about why they've made the harbor not open to anchoring anymore. This is where the confusion comes about because the law does not specify this kind of scenario. It's just generally speaking about the authorities stopping vessels from becoming hazards to navigations or becoming wrecks. The boats that are currently wrecks at Isla Mujeres, while it does not look beautiful, the fact of the matter is that there is law to help initiate clearing away those vessels. In our travels aboard our sailboats, personally, we've seen a lot of situations in Canada, in the US, and now in Mexico, where you see abandoned or wrecked vessels in various ports and harbors. Like, because it's so visual, people tend to go to that first when they are thinking about, oh, why are there new laws making it more difficult for cruisers? Why are boats not allowed to be in places anymore? Why is it that the rights of people going around in their sailing vessels are being taken away? Often it's easy to point at abandoned vessels, wrecked vessels, and to say that's the reason why. And I just wanted to talk about a little bit how that's the first thing that a lot of cruisers in this situation, I think, are focusing in on. But it's interesting to me that in the Mexican maritime law, as I read it, as I interpreted it, that once a vessel is in danger of becoming abandoned, or once it has become abandoned or a wreck, the authorities may take that wreck away, that they may sell the wreck for pieces in order to pay for the removal process. That makes it very clear that the problem is not the abandoned vessels. The problem is not the wrecked vessels. That is not the reason why this anchorage is being shut down. Authorities have the ability to clear out the wrecks and to pay for the removal of the wrecks, or to pursue the owners of those vessels for the payment of removal of wrecks. One thing I often think about is like people who drive on roads, their bicycles and their cars. Just because vehicles break down does not mean that we then do not allow vehicles to go on roads anymore. This situation is a little bit silly to talk about how, because there are wrecks, that anchorages should be shut down. The ability to safely moor your vessel in a location should be shut down because vessels break down and sink and become wrecks. The authorities really do have the law on their side to be able to remove the problematic vessels that are there. There will always be vessels that encounter problems, and the law seems to be talking about ways to avoid that here in Mexico. Putting that aside, the second reason that might possibly apply to why vessels are not being allowed to anchor at Isla Mujeres anymore is a problem we've also heard many times before when we've had our experiences throughout Canada and the US and now Mexico, which is environmental reasoning. There's different areas designated as national parks, protected areas for coral protection, for animal protection, fish and wildlife. Isla Mujeres' anchorage is not located within a protected area. The anchorage was drawn out and designated as an anchorage long ago because they wanted to protect the outer area of Isla Mujeres to be a national park, to be a protected area. My understanding is that if the authorities wanted to now create a protected area out of the anchorage of Isla Mujeres, that there would have to be local environmental agencies that would come in and designate that a protected area now. They would have to do assessments and to say this area needs to be protected for this and this reason and this way. Maybe boats are flushing too much sewage into the water. Maybe in general there's too much sewage in the water. There would have to be an environmental assessment to determine that that's the case, and then maybe then they create a protected area. And that would take some time. That has not happened yet. What I keep on coming back to with this situation is like we already have experienced this in various different anchorages and various different locations where we've tried to anchor. The authorities come in and then they say, oh, well, this area has to be protected. Downtown Vancouver was a good example. In Canada, in my hometown of sailing, they eventually said, you know what, there's a very strict time period as to how long vessels can be anchored in False Creek. You have to apply for the permit, and then you can only be anchored there for a short temporary period of time. That is to lighten the environmental impact of vessels. In the US, we had the same experience. Maybe people are experiencing it who are watching this video now with Sausalito in San Francisco. There have always been battles between people trying to freely use the waters and then new legislation, new laws coming in, trying to make it more difficult for people to live freely on the water. And an environmental impact is often used to clear people out. So I understand that in the future, that might be something that happens at Isla Mujeres. But we were not expecting it to happen so quickly because we already know that these kinds of environmental assessments take a lot of time. Alongside this new so-called regulation to not have any boats anchoring at Isla Mujeres. There's also a new rule that they're trying to implement that you have to check in with an agent at a marina specifically. We've checked into the country several times since I've made some videos about checking in and out of Isla Mujeres. We always check in just by visiting the harbor master, then visiting immigration and customs. We can speak a bit of Spanish, and that's all it really takes to pay the bills and to fill out the paperwork. Took a little bit of time, but it always gets done. That's been our experience. Because the authorities at Isla Mujeres want to check vessels physically when they arrive, or when even sometimes when they're leaving, they want you to bring them out to your vessel with your own dinghy. And I think it makes it a lot easier for them when they don't have to rely on people's dinghies. They want to have boats go to the marinas, the designated marinas, and then they can just walk onto people's vessels from the dock. So I understand that they're trying to do that for their own convenience. That makes sense. But also, there's nothing that says specifically that authorities can forcibly charge you a lot of extra money for you to check into the country. So that's disappointing. So we're not sure if that new regulation is going to hold. We haven't experienced it yet. We'll let you know in a video if we go and check out or then into Isla Mujeres ever again. There are a lot of other vessels at Isla Mujeres. There are a lot of tourist operating vessels, charter vessels, day operating tours. They only go around in the day for your typical kind of booze cruise with drinks and music, several hours long. And in between those tours, all those vessels, there's like 100 vessels, they anchor in the same area that we're talking about. They anchor out in the middle of the bay in the outer lagoon. Those vessels put their anchors down on a daily basis, and they bring their anchors up on a daily basis several times a day and use the harbor freely. And we are unclear as cruisers as if these laws are applicable now to those vessels as well. In terms of environmental impact, I would say that the commercially operating vessel is causing more environmental impact. So we're not sure if the environmental reasoning holds. Vessels that are bringing up and down their anchors on a daily basis are causing more trouble to the seagrass on the bottom there. I want to see those tours operating. It's a great experience for people coming to visit Isla Mujeres to be able to get out on those sailboats and go sailing in the beautiful waters of the area. So we are just kind of confused as to how the authorities differentiate between the cruising vessels and the tour vessels. I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the new policies, the new rules that are being implemented, we have not seen in writing, other than other cruisers, other people on their boats here at Isla Mujeres hearing secondhand from the authorities. We have not heard firsthand from the authorities. We have not seen this in writing yet. Another grouping of boat users at Isla Mujeres are the tourist operators using pangas that are not sailboats, shallower draft boats that like to park their boats along the sandy waterfront. We call generally these people the fishermen. Some of them are actually going out fishing. Some of them don't fish anymore. Some of them offer kind of like shorter snorkeling tours on their vessels. The most interesting aspect of this situation that I found is when we talk to local boat owners in this category, they have also been told by the authorities that they have to leave. We confirmed by talking to them that they've also been told that they have to vacate this waterfront, this Anchorage area, the beach, and in the water as well, if their vessels are up on the beach or in the water. Because not only us cruisers have been told that we can't anchor anymore, but also because they've also been told that they can't keep their boats there anymore. This is a problem that is beyond wrecks, beyond cruising boat wrecks. This is a problem that goes beyond an environmental concern about anchors causing problem in the seagrass and the coral. But this is a concern that might have something to do with the selling of the property of the airport strip, and they're trying to clear out this waterfront property, gentrify it, if you will, to build something. The cruisers are not the only ones who have been told to vacate the area. We've been questioning whether there might be some sort of negative reaction to gringos in particular, to the political situation of Americans coming down from the U.S. with their boats and enjoying the anchorage at Isla Mujeres. Maybe the authorities have some sort of issue in this political climate. The closeness, this being the closest part of Mexico. But I think that what makes the most sense in our discussions with local people at the island, there's a development looking to be made on this waterfront in particular. This is really disappointing, of course, because again, we've experienced this in everywhere where we've cruised before so far, whether it be in Canada, in the US, and now Mexico. Our boats are anchored in a beautiful place with multi-million-dollar views. Then people on land want to come and they only want the view for themselves. They're paying top dollar. They don't want it obstructed by sailing vessels or wrecks. We're pretty much used to this by now. I think we're visitors in the area. We don't own the land. We're just temporary visitors enjoying the beautiful sunsets, enjoying that beautiful waterfront. We know that psychologically bothers sometimes people on land who own the properties. That it's not fair that we're enjoying it for free but they have to pay to enjoy these views. I think that's what might be happening here again. All we can do is really just assess the situation as well as we can, and make our best interpretation of the situation as we can, and pass along this information to our fellow cruisers. If you're thinking of coming down to Mexico via Isla Mujeres now, it's become a little more complicated. The vibe changed. And by that I mean, instead of feeling welcome, instead of feeling like we could be there as long as we needed to be, it's a less solid feeling. When we're trying to safely plan our passages either north or south to the next anchorages, to our next destinations, it just becomes that much more complicated. Along with other difficulties that everybody's experiencing now in the world, political difficulties, environmental difficulties, it's just added to the list of complications that you have to consider when traveling down here. As cruisers who can't afford endless stays in marinas at growing costs, basically having to pay rent to have our boat somewhere instead of being freely anchored, instead of having that small amount of freedom, this has just been taken away in another case. Again, we want to do our best to abide by the laws of countries that we visit. We definitely don't want to piss people off. We want to be the best guests that we can be. And this is just an occasion where, unfortunately, it's just one step harder to do that. We don't have the endless budget to just keep on dishing out money as we wait for weather windows and try to assemble everything we need for a trip: water, fuel, food. So to summarize again, things have changed at Isla Mujeres. The anchorage that we became so familiar with over the years here in Mexico, it feels like a loss to us. We're saddened by the fact that it may not be the same anymore. We may not be able to anchor there anymore, and other cruisers may not be able to freely assemble to drop anchor in this beautiful, safe anchorage that so many people for hundreds of years. Because then there's the aspect of the historical fact that boats have been anchoring here for hundreds of years, maybe even thousands of years, if you consider the canoes of the ancient Mayan people here who came and sought shelter in the beauty of Isla Mujeres. And we were planning to be able to return here, and this is basically our home base for our vessel, and now that is just being kind of taken away. There's a lot of cruisers who have made Mexico their new home over the years, and I think it hurts a lot of people who have made it their home to just know that this one safe harbor along the entire Riviera Maya of the Yucatan Peninsula is like just being taken away randomly, and it's not being made clear why exactly that is. And we believe, again, that the reasoning is not for environmental reasons. It's not to stop corals from being destroyed or grass. It's not for the reason that sometimes vessels become wrecks on the beach. It's not for those reasons, but actually it's for the reason of capital owning people are saying that only belongs to them. The people who own the most capital get to have this space for themselves unless we pay money to be able to be in that space. Unless we pay the appropriate fees, we don't get to be in that space. And not even the local people who have been here for hundreds of years, their families, making business off of the beach, making business in the lovely protected harbor of Isla Mujeres, that they're being kicked out also for the needs of those who have more money. I don't believe that this is a specific problem to Isla Mujeres. We will encounter this in many places we go. Again, because we've experienced it in so many places that we visited before. I am worried also for the future in other countries where we visited as well. For example, in Guatemala, that has yet to be the case that cruisers are kicked out because of gentrification. But I can envision a future where that it will eventually happen as well. I worry for the visitors to Guatemala, but I also, more importantly, worry about it for the citizens of the country. Working class citizens can fall victim to this same kind of problem. Nobody seems to be safe from this ongoing issue. In closing, we will continue to explore the different places, even though it seems like every day there's a new challenge, newly formed challenges to sailing and cruising, but we will continue to sail on. Thank you for watching our videos. Thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.